What's up guys, Chris here, and guess what? We're back with another unit planning guide series for War of the Visions. I missed the month of November, so we have a lot of catching up to do and a lot of forecasting to get to. I hate to keep doing this, but I missed November because of another good news, bad news situation. The good news, which you guys might have seen on my community posts here on the channel, is that I got married in the last month, so obviously that's a great reason to be able to step away from the game for a little bit. The bad news is that a little over a week ago, I tore the Achilles tendon in my left foot playing sports, and it really is as horrific and ghastly as it sounds. No walking or even standing for almost 2 months, daily rehab for like 6 to 8 months, and it can take like over a year to fully recover from. Let's see if I can get this. You can see the cast, got a full cast on my foot. This stays here for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then I move into a boo and some other stuff. So that said, my next 3 months personally look a little different than the next 3 months in War of the Visions, but this video isn't about me. We know what you're here for, so let's get into the upcoming units and banners. If you guys like the video, thumbs up, big red button, and like Rosa, let's take aim on the future. We are smack dab right in the middle of Final Fantasy IV right now, so I'll start off by talking a little bit about Cecil, but before we get to that, I want to quickly mention some updates from the Japan version of the game that we should be aware of here on the global version. And first off is the huge update from Japan, and it's that they've increased the level cap to 120 and added what are called EX jobs. Essentially, these are the next evolution for characters where they get new, extremely powerful abilities on their job boards, and you need to use limited materials to break characters into their EX jobs. This has a major impact on the game, as some old units like Eileen, Elda, Rob, and a couple of others get some very powerful abilities. If you guys want to see more about these EX jobs, I suggest you head over to Cabbage's channel, as he plays and covers the JP version of the game and has already made a couple of videos on this. Along with this update, they actually added more unit shards to the friend medal shop too, so make sure you start saving up friend medals right now, as you'll be able to pick up hundreds of UR unit shards for units when you need to and when this update drops in global. Lastly, there's a quality of life update coming to the game where you can actually craft plus versions of gear instantaneously if you have the materials, which is obviously a huge time saver when it comes to crafting +4 and +5 gear pieces. Now, don't get me wrong, the gear system in this game still sucks, but this will make it suck just a little bit less. This update has been around in JP for a while now, I believe, so we can expect it in pretty short time in global. Okay, let's get back to Cecil here, and the only thing I want to say about Cecil is that a lot of people have hated on Cecil simply because he was given out for free, and he's not exactly a meta-breaking unit in any way. However, I do think it's really hard to justify the stance of not taking him to Limit Break 4 and level 89 at least, because with all of the free shards they've given us, that's roughly about 5,000 or 6,000 visiore from the shops, and for free to play or not, there's not many places in War of the Visions where you're going to get better value in terms of visiore to effectiveness than taking Cecil to Limit Break 4. He's more than a capable support slasher and bruiser, so my personal recommendation is that everyone should have at least a level 89 Cecil, since the cost is so low. And there's plenty enough time left in this event that you could easily still get him to Limit Break 4 if you haven't already. Okay, moving on to Luartha, and she came in JP before the Final Fantasy IV event, so chances are she'll probably be here next week, even during the end of the Final Fantasy IV event, or maybe the week after, and pending Christmas units, which we'll talk about in a second. I'm not going to complicate this too much. Luartha is basically a higher damage version of Lucia, and she's fire element, so she can also do slash chaining with her soldier sub job that you can see right here. This makes her ideal in a mono fire team if you have Delita and Rain, pretty much in every area of the game for PvE and PvP. You could pair this team up with the Keepers of the Crystal Vision card, which people have forgotten about, increases fire attack for your full party, and you're going to have a very, very deadly team as long as you avoid Glaciela. Now that said, you can also pair her with Lucia and Mustadio and actually have a pretty impressive missile chaining team for raids and boss events. But outside of these two situations, which not too many accounts will fall under, I would personally pass on this banner. Coming probably with Luartha will be this Subject of Study vision card, and you can see this provides missile attack and unit attack resistance, so it's kind of like a mashup of Frederika's Dream and the Odin vision card. So we're starting to see more and more of these mashup vision cards in War of the Visions, and for me this is going to be a pass in global, particularly because Frederika's Dream is not limited. Like, I believe it's a limited card in JP, so this has probably had more value in JP. This card's gonna be a lot less coveted in global simply because of that. And increasing strike resistance on win units, the little bonus ability here, strike resistance may be a problem in the future, but not enough of a problem right now to warrant spending visiore for this card. Okay, so the elephant in the room, pun intended of course, is the Christmas units, and there's no official news as of the making of this video whether or not we're going to get these in global. But I don't see how we don't get these units in global at this point. After what happened with the Halloween units, actually, I would almost guarantee it. If they do announce these units for global, MD and I will make a video with a more thorough breakdown of the units and which ones you should pull for. The only unit I'm not so sure about is this one, which is the Christmas Vinera, since she has a main job right here that hasn't been released in global, which is Pugilist. So it'll be interesting to see if they release her or not in global. That said, the Christmas units are going to be a pass for me for free-to-play and light spenders. I get it, they're awesome unit designs, and they're not bad units, but we're currently in the stretch of limited units, including Halloween units, Final Fantasy IV, and then probably these. And it's going to be a complete visiore burnout, and I just don't see how you could pursue these units if you went in at all on Halloween or FF4. That said, they could potentially roll out some crazy visiore bonuses or unit shards like the Halloween event, which would make these definitely more enticing. Until then, stay tuned for news on these units before you get too excited. Next, we have this, Skahal making Firefly tea with Lorela vision card. You see Maneater for magic units, increased magic, some other junk. This is basically a no-go. This is kind of like the movie Ghost Rider. If you watched Ghost Rider, which nobody has ever recommended that you should do, you're kind of committed to watching Ghost Rider 2, even though you know deep down in your heart that you shouldn't and it's not going to be a good movie. So if you've invested heavily in Skahal, which again nobody has ever or will ever recommend that you do, you're kind of committed to looking at this vision card seriously. But my advice, don't go see Ghost Rider 2, man. Just step away. I did want to briefly mention that we haven't got a rerun of Final Fantasy XIV like expected, but Gumi could end up shoving this in between any of these upcoming banners or not giving it to us at all. It's really hard to say at this point. It's more likely that this banner is coming sooner rather than later, but no matter when this comes, my advice hasn't changed since the October guide. It would be just keep your visiore away from Thancred and save for better things. And one of those other better things is going to be Niv'Lu. She debuts a new sniper main job, which actually makes bow users kind of scary again. It has defense penetration, you can reduce speed, reduce movement on enemy units, and you can also break barriers on enemy units, and all of these are new mechanics that enter with Niv'Lu. Not only that, but she has this time mage sub-job, so she can support other units with haste, slow, and quicken. I'd say you could safely think about Niv'Lu if you have high-level vision cards or espers that can maximize missile attack, and make sure you farm up a +5 killer bow during her event, or that you bring a high-level elven bow from the current Trials of Reckoning. Outside of that, you really should treat her kind of like a specialist. And I say this like, not that she's going to be a bad unit, but she's definitely not an anchor unit type like Glaciela or Kilthay is. And I definitely wouldn't recommend younger accounts pursue her, as she's more of a luxury unit in my mind. Next up, we have the Leviathan vision card and Esper. And this one's really interesting. You can see pierce resistance on the card here, which is nice, but certainly not required, even though there's going to be plenty of strong pierce teams in the meta by the time this comes out. The area resistance for water units is a nice buff, probably one of the better elemental buffs that's present on these vision cards, but you're really going to be going after the Esper here. This is going to be, I believe, the first Esper that provides a flat elemental buff to attack. You're going to see this right here, a buff of 25% to water attack. You also have a fire killer of 25%, so you can really leverage elemental advantage against fire units. So the obvious benefits here are to strong water teams. So if you've built up Miranda, Glaciela, and Ildyra, you should strongly consider this vision card and Esper combo, which will likely come on a step up for 10k visiore. Combined with a high level siren card in your party, you'd have a pretty tough team to beat. However, outside of simply beefing up your water units, I think there have been better generalist Esper VC combos like Fenrir and Aegeon. And now we arrive at Sakura, and you guys might recognize her from Brave Exvius, and Sakura is a really unique and strong unit. She has a really interesting kit. She's a combination light and lightning mage with all sorts of damage increasing debuffs and interesting effects. I think as the game goes on, we're going to end up seeing more and more characters like Sakura that can deal damage with multiple elements. So she has this master ability here as well that increases light attack by 15 for the entire party. So she makes light teams with characters like Ramada, Cecil, Engelbert, Warrior of Light. She makes all of those characters even better. So if you have some of these characters, I think Sakura could slot right into a light team with no problem, and she could potentially work pretty well with like Skahal and Salir, and actually Niv'Lu with lightning chaining and lightning imperil. But again, while she's a great character, to really see the full potential from her, you'll really have to play to her strengths, which not every account will be able to do. After Sakura, we get this Helena vision card, and I just wanted to mention this because it has this agility party buff, which ends up being the same as the Scion of House Beov card from Final Fantasy Tactics. It's plus 15% to agility, which it's a pretty ridiculous bonus, and the accuracy here for dark units is kind of just a gravy ability, which is really nice if you've built up dark units. But if you don't have the Scion card, you should strongly consider looking at this card. The agility buff is really good, but if you do have the Scion card, obviously I probably wouldn't bother with this card. It'd be hard to justify the visiore cost to max out this card or even level up this card for a nearly identical effect to the Scion card. And along with the release of this, you're going to get the release of the Glacial Vision card and Esper. And I know this is an MR, but I wanted to make sure to draw some attention to it because you can see the unit effect and the party effect here to juice up ice attack by a whole ton. And this is an MR card you could actually reasonably look at if you run teams with like Agrius, Medina, Laswell, or Gilgamesh to hold you over until they release a UR version of a card that does the same effect. Similarly, the Esper does the same thing. You can juice up ice attack here by about 25%. So between the Esper and the Vision card, you can actually increase a unit's ice attack by 60%. And that's with an MR card or Esper, so pretty significant combo. If you run ice teams, you should seriously think about this because the cost of an MR Vision card is actually a lot lower as well. And finally, I wanted to finish off by looking a little ways out. And in case you guys didn't know, the next collaboration event that came out in Japan was Final Fantasy X. And this came with the release of Titus, Yuna, and Auron. And they likely won't come out in global until around March. I think this was the 1-year anniversary event in Japan, and the game launched in late March, so that's when we can kind of expect this Final Fantasy X event in global. So I'm not going to dive into the units just quite yet because we have a couple more months to look at these units, but there is a few things that we need to know. And the first is that they gave Titus for free in JP, much like we got Cecil for Final Fantasy IV. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean we can guarantee it would happen in global, but it's definitely something to consider as we approach the event. Second is that these new units did launch with their EX jobs, so instantly they became some of the best units on the Japan server right away. So this is just something to keep in mind as we move closer to the spring. And anytime you're considering pulling on any of these units or vision cards that I covered, it's important to realize what's on the horizon. And I might be kind of shooting myself in the foot here, but I honestly think that the best strategy might be to ignore everything I said in this video and just hoard for Final Fantasy X units and grab some of these EX job units right off the bat. You could probably save up roughly 50 or 60,000 visiore by the time this event comes out. Anyways, that's it, Moogles and Chocobos. Who are you guys saving up for or looking forward to? And I honestly like where my account is at the moment, and none of these units that I covered are super exciting or enticing to me personally, so I might just be hoarding for Final Fantasy X personally. But what about you guys? Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Appreciate all you guys following the channel, and we'll see you next time.